Some auction houses have been around for 300 years. Institutions representing a cultural heritage whose future now lies in the hands of a new generation of consumers, where accessibility and transparency are the keys to success. It's the absolute opposite of the auction world as we know it from before. When we launched Barnaby's more than 10 years ago, everyone talked about the online revolution of one of the world's most conservative industries, auctions, art and collectibles. Today, the industry is finally beginning to catch up with today's reality. A development that COVID-19 has partly pushed forward, although it started much earlier. Since the global online spend are increasing not just because of the quantity of what we buy online, but also because of the quality. Today, almost all significant purchases we make begin with an online search, even if we complete a transaction in person. So why should buying art and antiques be any different? One thing is certain. While the first wave of change may be over, the revolution in the online art marketplace continues and will only go from strength to strength. The industry is at a turning point. It has finally woken up to the fact that it is the consumers who now set the rules. 5 years ago, auctioneers were asking themselves, should auction houses be bricks and mortar or online? Today, that question is redundant. It's not a matter of either or, it's about doing both. Digital is not a separate entity and online is not isolated from the physical experience. But the combination has proven to radically increase interest in the auction industry. Not that long ago, the auction industry was viewed as a conservative market, dominated by a selected number of collectors and dealers, as well as the world's wealthiest. Confidentiality and anonymity have long been seen as attractive features of the auction process for buyers and sellers. The somewhat mysterious process left largely unexplained for the benefit of the elite who knew how to navigate its rules. Now, through transparency is the key to growth as it breeds trust among the public. The new generation of buyers and sellers expect all information to be easily at their disposal, without any barriers. So what is the new and younger generation of buyers looking for? Value, quality, a sense of history and sustainability, all traits inherent in the auction industry. As people become accustomed to buying at auction, their confidence grows and they are prepared to spend larger sums. But it's not just about what they buy, it's also about the thrill of the auction experience. If it has not already happened, it is about time to take the opportunity to shape the buying habits of the next generation. The challenge is to pursue young people setting up a home for the first time to turn as easily to online auctions, dealers and galleries as they currently do to their nearest IKEA. Consumers know what they want. The question the last decade has been, do the players of the industry know what that is? Successful businesses today shape their operations around consumer demand. Navigating the site must be effortless and intuitive, as consumers are looking for convenience above everything. The auction industry has traditionally been seen as a defined market space, but today's consumer views it very differently. Their view of the market removes yesterday's barriers between dealers and auction houses, putting them together with everyday retail and big brands so that they all can compete for the same consumers alike. But now, let me introduce Brian Graves, founder of the auction house Everything But the House. Brian Graves, welcome to Barnaby's podcast.
Thanks for having me, Panos.
Before we start, you have to tell me more about the name, Everything But the House. What does it mean?
Yeah, well, when we founded the company, we really wanted to plant a stake in the ground that our goal was to help families in transition, people that love collecting in this marketplace, to figure out how to um, find a marketplace regardless of what the object was. And of course, we thought about a lot of the let's say more posh names to some degree in terms of what an auction house would normally be named, but we felt it was very important that people understood that we wanted to be approachable. We wanted to support them regardless of what their object was. And really, because part of that goal is we want to make sure that these objects in the resale market find a new caretaker and a new owner. And, we knew it was a tall bill to order to say we're going to sell everything. That's pretty challenging in a business. But at the same time, we felt that's what the market needed. And so
And what about, I mean, is there some kind of items that people not sell? I mean, if you sell kind of everything for them, but is it something that they keep themselves?
Yeah, I mean, obviously everything, there's context to selling everything, right? So the goal is that we're supporting families to decide, what do they want to sell, getting sellers to understand based on their expectation what should be sold in a market or our type of market as compared to, maybe another market. And certainly there are things we come across that are donatable or in some cases, don't have a market to be sold. But again, in stating everything, the goal is that we will very objectively look at a collection of contents and try to understand what the market of those objects are and make sure that we have an audience that will respond to those, with the assumption that, they're willing to pay for them, obviously, and pay for the transport of those objects. So, in a lot of ways, we say nothing's off limits. I mean, we've sold things. We've sold a horse, we've sold an airplane, we've sold, you name it, just about we've sold it. Over, close to 3.5 million plus items that we've sold in our history. But again, it's the context that we want to be approachable, both from the seller and the shopper side.
But what about the plane? Are you a pilot? Did you bring in the plane in your studio?
No, but Jackie's husband is a pilot, ironically. So it was nice because he gave us a little bit of feedback on it. But I will say I picked up a Ducati from a client's house, and he handed me the keys, and he said, "Here, just you don't have to pay to transport it; just drive it in." And thankfully, I had my motorcycle license. But that's the fun thing about this business is you just never know what you're going to come across. And again, that's why we want sellers to ask us. We want them to push us. Is this something that you can help me with? And then our job is obviously to very objectively understand what their expectations are, what the market is for that object, and effectively we want to be an advocate for them to take that object to the marketplace. At the same time, we're a two-sided marketplace, so we advocate for seller and shopper, which means we have to have a kind of what I always say is a managed, trusted, consistent, and convenient platform that allows that to occur, that transaction to occur.
But actually, isn't that a complexity, or at least part of the complexity of this industry, that you actually deal with both the consignor and the buyer?
Yeah, I mean, I will say we didn't pick the easy business, and in the business, we also didn't pick the simple aspect of the business. A lot of times I say we've chosen to take the hard road, but we've chosen to take the hard road because one, it is enjoyable and fun along the way, and two, it's the road that needs to be taken for this industry. You have to figure out how to navigate that, kind of two-sided marketplace to make sure that you're keeping it fair for everybody, but also when you're not aligned with a particular vertical, so it's not that we just sell designer fashion or fine art or vintage vehicles, or jewelry. We sell all of that, which means you need to have a degree of expertise in being able to handle that. But that's also what makes what makes it so ideal for our sellers and shoppers is you never know what you're going to discover as a shopper, and it changes every single day with several thousand items going up on the site. And as a seller, you know that you can be confident in not having to, kind of compare notes from several different providers as to what what the right choice is. So
if you ask people outside industry if they have been to an auction, many says no, 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 I can't afford it. I can't afford it. It's so expensive. But you actually, you have put an estimate on all your items at $1.
that's it. We want the market to decide. I think again, it goes back to the approachable aspect of the business. My goal, and this gets back into a little bit of the history in terms of how I came to this business, but I didn't intend to be a collector when I was first introduced to the market. Obviously, I had an appreciation for design and an appreciation for nice things, but I came to this business candidly because I couldn't afford nice things. And so I started out buying at estate sales and learned about auctions. And after more than a decade of experiencing that and experiencing the variety of those, you come to realize that this is something that doesn't just have to be for people in the auction world. This is something that any consumer looking for a product can approach this industry and not be scared off by it. And there are things in price points. Auctions are not only for 6 and 7 figure things. They're for less. They're for 2-figure things and 1-figure things in some respects. But it's again finding that balance for the marketplace, and kind of melding between auction goer and general consumer. That is part of our goal. We're really trying to break down the barriers and really just get consumers to enjoy this market.
But you're not afraid of being the dollar store?
Well, obviously, there's an operational expense to everything we do, which is part of the challenge. We can, obviously, we cannot afford a business where everything sells for $1, and obviously that is also the challenge when we talk to our sellers. They're like, well, what if it only brings $1? And what you have to get them to understand that is with more than, over 2 million registered users on the site from around the world, there's a little bit of a, there's a social aspect to people will not let it sell for $1. That the market kind of finds the price. And a lot of times the way I explain that to people is you will have, there's kind of 3 degrees of shoppers. There's the professional shopper that is buying, potentially to resell, and they understand, the market price. They understand what they want to pay wholesale, but effectively you will get this wholesale, very strong and transparent wholesale offer. Now that's not ideal from a seller perspective. And so the next aspect is you get what I call the bargain shopper. They know what it might be worth in the retail market, but they want to get a little bit of a deal, so they feel it's a good investment. Think of the people that, go to, when they see a sale driving down, they stop just in case there's something. And they wind up buying something on sale, whether they need it or not, because it's a good deal. But generally speaking, they're paying a fair price. And then, of course, we get the shopper that is buying because they just have to have it. And it is because it is unique and one of a kind. It's because there's a level of convenience, because it's, they've been scouring the earth for this for 2 years, and they would rather just pay a premium to get it. Or candidly, in today's market, post-COVID, go get a couch. You try to get a quality couch and it's going to take you 12 to 16 weeks at best. Whereas in the secondary market, the opportunity is you can get a couch that is like new. And in some cases better constructed and a better design than maybe even a modern or contemporary couch. And so people are paying, in some cases, over retail just for the ability to have it at their house within a week or pick it up, within 2 days. And so, but my point of all that is that the market, it will not sell for $1. It sells for some percentage under or over, but drives very strong market values. And when you compare that obviously to kind of the local foot traffic of a consignment store, or the number of people that can attend a live auction on a Saturday without some online component, it's kind of effective. It's not going to do better in most cases. And candidly, my answer is always, if I knew a better way to do it, I would do it that way. This is, we have an amazing team of technologists and kind of logistics personnel and people in the sales and marketing world that are obviously driving us towards getting the best result, again, for both seller and shopper.
Well, you attract obviously the how shall we say, the traditional auctioneer or auction audience, but you also attract the younger ones. Can you see a difference between the two groups of audience?
I think what is fun is, obviously they each come in with their knowledge and their history. Some come in with, they've only bought online and that's their only concept or perspective. And obviously we have people that are hardcore collectors that have bought from the auction industry for 4 decades or more. And what's ironic is in some cases, each comes in with a predisposition of why they're not going to like some aspect of the platform. That being said, by again making it approachable and simple and easy, and actually working to educate everyone, we see them both become adopters of the platform and see the value for what it is. And so I will say in our history, we had this dichotomy: are we an auction house or are we an e-commerce platform? And to some degree, for a long time, we were an auction house that leveraged some of the benefits of e-commerce, but at the same time, sometimes we would use the excuse, well, we're an auction house, you can't expect us to ship things, for free or for a low cost. And what we finally come to realize is, you can't straddle the fence. Either you're an auction house or you're an e-commerce business. And for us, it's really driven this focus to continue to embrace e-commerce and the benefits of e-commerce and the clientele, including the younger generation, because obviously that's our future. And kind of working to kind of find this happy medium for everyone where we can coexist and see the benefits of this market and the resale industry for what it is.
And you're not afraid of losing the kind of mystique about the industry that has been kind of surrounded the auction market for many, many years or even decades?
Well, again, I think that's where some of the romanticism can come into the conversation. There's certainly, we have people that come to our website with no intent to buy anything. Honestly, they're just educating themselves on what an object is, what a manufacturer is. They're interested in the content. We tell the stories behind the items or behind the sellers, and sometimes that results in a bid or a sale, but often that just results in a community that is there to kind of learn from one another. And so so I think, the mystique is that our goal is to obviously educate one another about the benefits of these objects and the history of these objects, and to have a certain level of respect. And obviously that's where I think people that are buying, not just from the sustainability aspect, but also the why, to eliminate the homogenization of kind of the decor and home decorating world, and effectively find something that is one of a kind. That's why they come to us. But obviously, if we're not giving them the history of that object or telling them why it's unique and one of a kind, and working to educate them that that we're missing something there, and I think it's really important.
And what about the value of affection? I think that's the word, isn't it?
Yeah, it's, again, I think that's one of the things that's interesting about the platform is there is this connection. When people come and they see something, and candidly going back to everything but the house. We don't want people, not that they can't come to the site because they're looking for a green Rolex Daytona, right? If that's what they want, they can set up their keyword search and it'll alert them when one comes on the site. But candidly, we want people that don't necessarily know what they want. They're coming, think about going to an estate sale or a tag sale, or an auction. You don't always get the catalog before you arrive and know exactly what you're there to bid on. You're kind of, it's the excitement of discovery that forces you to come in and go down the rabbit hole. And for us, we want people to go down the rabbit hole. And when they go down the rabbit hole, that's where they connect with things. Again, it might create a memory. It might remind them, for me, it might be the milk glass iced tea glasses that I drank out of that my grandmother would serve me iced tea in. I see those and there's an emotional connection because there's a memory attached. And as much as we want to say every object is unique and one of a kind, there are often affections and affinities for a certain object because of a memory it evokes. And whether that's a newly created memory or interest, or that's something that is from, decades past. And so for us, again, it's much about that importance of, allowing people to connect with the object for whatever reason that is. But coming back to, starting at $1, we're also letting them decide, where do they want to start and where do they want to stop? And then ultimately the market is the deciding factor. And again, the irony, as much as some people think starting at $1 might be adverse to the best outcome, it's quite the opposite. We get everyone engaged, who has an interest. They watch the object, potentially for days, and then, to whatever degree they're committed, they fight the good fight at the end, and the object results in the sale that it should, often, generating auction records and best performance for it.
What is the latest trend, or how can you spot the trends before the others? Because that's obviously a good way to make the the best purchase, obviously.
Yeah, I think that, that's actually one of the fun parts of the job, and to some degree because of the volume we sell. Again, we sell over 30,000 items a month in every category you can imagine and multiple price points. And often I think back to the days, let's go back, whatever, 8 or 10 years, where the conversation was around minimalism and mid-century modern, and the lack of interest in brown furniture, continental furnishings, or whatever that might have been. And the irony is, I remember, you would hear the discussions about, the lack of interest in these other objects, but then I would see activity on the site where someone's bidding on a Louis XV, bedroom suit, and paying a very strong price for it. And so, from my perspective, one of the things about trends is obviously they're unpredictable and they're hard to see coming. And often by the time you're talking about them, the industry, the consumer is already moving towards the next trend, by the time it actually becomes part of the conversation. And so I think one of the things that's exciting for me is, I'd say when I first came to the business, and this again ties in with the sustainability aspect, is again, in at least, where we're at, there was this, there's the baby boomer generation that is downsizing these large collections of objects and were heavy in the collectibles market and wouldn't just buy one of something, they would buy 10 of something. And, when they were selling those objects, at least in the early 2000s, when we started the business, the next generation didn't, they might not have wanted a collection at all, so they were much more minimalist in what they were acquiring, and also not interested in, to some degree, the longevity of those items. I used to call it a throwaway society, that was furnishing homes. And from a trend that I'm now seeing, and candidly, I wondered, for a long time, I thought that shift may never come back with the advent of the internet and the ease of access to other objects. But now I'm finally seeing, and part of this, again, driven by COVID and that aspect of sustainability, you're seeing people look at objects as investments. And rather than paying $100 for a table that they know is only going to last 5 years, now they're paying $200 for that table. Um, and it's a little hard to do that sometime, but they're doing it with the understanding that in 10 years, possibly it's still worth $200, or even if it's worth less, it might be 150. And so I'm seeing this interest in the longevity of the objects as investment. And I'm also seeing this kind of shift away from minimalism in some cases to also personal, style and design, which means more eclectic and is kind of moving towards that, blend of maximalism. And obviously in society we have people at both opposing ends, but again, it's kind of exciting to see people really embracing the resale market again and finding their individuality.
So you're confident about the future in the market, I guess?
Yeah, I am. I mean, look, there will be for generations in this business, there is the need to transact personal assets. They will always change hands, whether that's due to changing style, changing geographies, or, obviously kind of the generation, and moving through one estate to the next. And I think as a society, the more we adopt and understand that objects can have a lifetime and they can last from generation to generation. Now that's not necessarily saying I have to like what my parents liked from a design perspective, but it's okay for me to buy objects knowing that there will be another caretaker after me. And ultimately, I think it's important for us to realize as a society, the more we can do to really focus on the decreasing the environmental aspect by not necessarily manufacturing items that have a limited lifespan. We should be better than that, for each other.
So it's not just about sustainability from the environment aspect. It's actually sustainability, a sustainable financial way to shop, so to speak.
It is. I mean, a lot of times, if we went in buying our houses realizing that in 5 years we're going to, tear them down and have to build a new one, we wouldn't do it. And it's just applying it to a different asset class. It's understanding that any investment we make has the opportunity to be a good investment. But that's where we also have to work to educate, the kind of the benefits of those investments. And I think that's the challenge is a lot of people, again, they look at what they have in their checking account and they, look at the fact that they need a piece of furniture and it stops there. I can afford this one and it meets my immediate needs. But it's continuing to bake into the conversation the importance of, what are the ramifications of that, down the road, both to you personally and financially, and also, to the environment. But at the same time, that's predicated on there need to be easy services to make personal assets in the form of furnishings and decor and art liquid, because historically it's been a very illiquid and difficult to transact, outside of, again, the more traditional methods of doing that. So the better we can provide consumers tools to be able to do that and be part of that transaction, but obviously managing it so it's a great experience for all, the better we are going to be able as a society to make that.
Historically, one of the main reasons why you have been selling at auction has been death, divorce, and disaster. Now you have described here about decoration or decluttering, etc. With COVID, do you think that we will go back to the death, divorce, disaster situation, or will it still be the young audience that kind of will be the new motor in this industry?
No, I think you're spot on, Pontus. I think what's happening is again, we're seeing that generational shift, and we're seeing kind of a younger generation, that is pushing forward the narrative of sustainability and kind of importance and choices. And all, I'd say those are choices in in life in general. What is most important in life, and often that's experiences and friendships and effectively how we treat each other in this planet. And so I think the shift is there, and I hope it stays. Obviously, I mean, this is this isn't the first time in history where these narratives have been pushed forward. But I think what's different is obviously with the advent of technology over the last several years, and this kind of circular economy, becoming transactable because of technologies and networks. That can continue. And so again, I think I think this shift is going to continue, and it's going to it will drive forward. And but again, it also means we have to have conversations, and some of those are tough conversations because our economies are built on industrialization and sales, and someone has to cut down the tree, someone has to mill the tree, someone has to sell the tree, and someone has to deliver, once it's a piece of furniture, and somebody has to deliver it. And there's these competing aspects of the benefits to society, whether it's keeping someone employed and with a paycheck, or the long-term environmental impact. And point being, these aren't simple conversations, but they're conversations that effectively, again, around the realm of sustainability and us being here, kind of the all for one and one for all, we need to talk about it.
My last question to you, Brian, is what is the weirdest thing you ever sold at your auctions?
Oh my gosh. I mean, there are plenty, that are strange. I mean, obviously we get into, what things have been manufactured from, in terms of, I mean, we've sold, things made from, human skeletons and, kind of every type of object you can imagine. Man, I should always have the answer to that, because that's one that comes a lot. What's the strangest? What's the most exciting? I think for me, it's you just never know. There's kind of an element of weirdness to everything we do. Actually, it's kind of baked into our mission statement. As we're here to celebrate the weird, wonderful and wild aspect of selling uncommon goods.
What happened with the plane?
Yeah, well, I mean, the plane was obviously, it wasn't weird in terms of what it was, but it certainly was weird in terms of how it came about. I mean, again, you don't expect that every day that someone's going to call you, to sell an airplane. And in this case, we had a family, they were located in southeastern part of the United States, and there was a plane that was part of their estate that had belonged to, who had passed on this estate, and it was on the western side of the United States. And they had spent, of course, there's listing sites for airplanes and those sorts of things, and they had worked with people to attempt to broker the sale of this plane for well over a year at a fair price, and it just hadn't moved. And they asked us, they said, "What do you think about selling a plane?" We're like, "Well, haven't done it before, but as long as you're okay with it starting at $1, and here's our marketing plan, we'll do it." And what was ironic is, within under a month, I mean, we put together a plan. We actually threw a party, at the plane. I think we had a thing on the tarmac, and we dressed up our staff and pilot outfits, and kind of had, you could have your own private plane and walking people around and handing them champagne. But at the end of the day, it started on the site at $1, and it sold for significantly over what they had been asking. And even after our commission, I mean, they made substantially more. And again, what's exciting is, again, as much as these objects are one in a kind of unique, again, that speaks to the audience, because with over 2.5 million buyers, we had someone that was a pilot. They were in the northern part of the United States. They saw the plane on the site. They'd been looking for one, and they had somebody drop them off, in where this plane was located, and got it and took it back to where they were. And so it again, what is interesting is, as far as as hard as it is that we think sometimes it is to connect two people, both seller and shopper. Again, that's the power of a marketplace. Is especially when you compel people to work together. And that's where, again, it's a lot for our sellers to trust us to start, something at $1. At the same time, it's why our shoppers look every day. And if they see something that maybe they don't want, they will certainly share it with their friends. Hey, these people are selling a plane on their website, and they'll share it with their networks. And you can still transact something. But going back to the weird, there's nothing that scares us, again, as long as it's legal to sell and we're appropriate.
But the plane store is a good store of recycling, I think, huh?
Yeah. Well, again, it's, rather than something sitting there for another year trying to connect with a buyer, within a matter of 7 days, we are able to connect buyer and seller and get that thing, in use again. And so it just speaks to the fact that, again, we can make these connections, as long as we're working together to support a marketplace that brings us together.
And you got the chance to feel like Frank Sinatra for a while, or up in the plane, up in the air.
Yeah. Well, that's one I didn't, like I said, I didn't fly the plane, or we didn't have to, but but again, selling a plane, for us, we have to, what are the legalities of selling the plane? What are the safety protocols involved with selling? We've sold helicopters, we've sold ultra glides, and a lot of times for us, when someone asks us, again, they say, can you sell this? Sometimes the answer is, I don't know. Let us check on it, and that's where we involve our legal teams, and obviously, kind of see what it is in order to do it. But I guess the point being, going back to everything but the house, nothing's going to scare us. And this is where we work together to have the conversation. Are we the right place? And we're not. And obviously, we're not always the right place. A lot of times we say, this is a tricky one to sell because it's a very nuanced object or marketplace. And that's where we can connect them with a partner or give them some, potentially some direction. But like I said, what's fun is, you just never know. You never know what we're going to come across, and that makes the job unique and interesting every day. And for me personally, coming into this as a collecting addict, I get the benefit of saying, this is how I get my fix. I don't have to, buy or find all these things and upset my wife by bringing them home and filling up the living room. We get to transact and interact, with these objects by being a part of this industry, which is, wonderful.
That's a great situation, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, Brian. Thank you so much for being on the pod, and I hope to speak to you soon to hear if you sell an elephant or a jumbo jet or whatever that might be.
That's we'll try to find something crazy. So so next time we get together, we can certainly point it out.
Thanks a lot.
Take care.